Well, I think it is important for us to think about the future. That is not actually an easy task because most of us don't spend a lot of time looking 10 or 20 years out. And it requires actually some discipline to do that. But we have a choice. We either look towards the future and in a sense create that future to some degree, or we sit back and the future happens despite us. We have a choice. We can actually play an active part in trying to actually make that happen, or we can choose to do nothing, but it will happen anyway. So, part of the whole futures thinking is, okay, how do we actually get the future and the future that we particularly want for our kids, rather than just letting it happen to us. For us, we decided it was quite important, given our objective of high quality outcomes for all kids, to actually try and attempt to look forward and to, as far as possible, to try and influence that future to the extent that we can. Change is happening extremely rapidly, and people tell us, of course, that it's actually going to speed up. So, while we're educating our kids and perhaps they have a more instinctive feel about it, for some of us, even just the speed of change is a challenge. If we want to understand that better, we do need to be thinking about the world that we are going to be living in. And that's not just an issue around our young people and giving kids opportunity to succeed, but it's also going to be a challenge for people like ourselves who perhaps may be challenged by technology already. I think it is difficult to actually put aside the quality time that you need to actually engage in futures thinking. Most of us are busy people. It's a fact of life today that people are busy, they hold down jobs, they are dealing more in the now and not necessarily looking too far ahead. And it's been a real challenge, and I think it is a challenge to people to actually be able to do that. I think in the case of this particular Secondary Futures project, we have been very lucky in that the time, in a sense, has been created that we can have those sort of conversations. We have had the freedoms to put aside our day-to-day issues for periods of time and try and do some sort of serious thinking around, well, what might things be like in 10 or 20 years' time? But it doesn't come naturally, and I think society mitigates almost against that as being a natural part of the way we work. Well, I think the outcomes can be personal, but they can also be organisational and even wider. Outcomes, from my point of view, is that probably for the first time in my working career, I have actually stopped and started thinking and talking about what things might be like. And without this opportunity, I rather doubt that would have happened, actually. I've become quite enthusiastic about trying to look ahead, see what we can do, and quite enthusiastic around trying to spread that. And it's not just within our own organisation, to our own boards, but it's also being able to identify, okay, if this is where we want to be, where are the points of influence? Who do we need to influence to enable this to happen? And from our perspective, that means we do have to be in a position of talking about futures thinking to government, to the policy makers. Unless we get embedded in key areas, then it's going to be difficult to fulfill. However, how successful? Well, I think we are seeing shifts. I do hear people, ministry people and other sector people talking more about futures. I am starting to see it embedded into policy discussions and that sort of thing, which I think is, a significant step. I think teachers are really don't have the control on knowledge anymore in the way they used to. Kids can actually go on the net and they can find out virtually anything about everything, and so therefore the dynamics have actually changed, and it's really going to be more and more the case of actually facilitating accessing that knowledge and I guess in a sense teaching kids how to learn rather than actually just filling their heads full of content, because the content is actually becoming more and more available. I'm Ray Newport, the General Manager of the New Zealand School Trustees Association.